know it's summer? Just listen.
On Saturday, the 15th of August 2015, World Jam Global Radio presents a family fun day to Margate in the Sands. Coaches will be leaving from North London, Tottenham Town Hall, South London, Brixton Town Hall, East London, Stratford Town Hall. Coaches will be leaving at 7:30 a.m. sharp. Tickets are priced at £30 for adults, £20 for children. Tickets can be purchased via the World Jam Global website and any DJ on the bill. Your tickets include coach transportation and the after party in the evening. You can purchase your ticket via the World Jam Global website or any DJ on the bill. Now, this is an event not to be missed in the Sand. On Saturday, the 15th of August 2015, World Jam Global Radio presents a family fun day to Margate.
Hey, what's up now? Brother, what's up? This is a big party, man. Yeah, I can dig it. Solid. Right on. Well, it's a big good evening from me, Kervin, Julien, on Issues Today on World Jam Global Radio. And I've got an absolutely horrific show to share with you tonight. Following up from some of our recent police brutality shows. Tonight we look at the shooting, the killing of ERNEST DUENEZ Jr., who was shot dead outside his home on June the 8th, 2011. And tonight we have Salazar, our dear friend, former Los Angeles policeman, law enforcement officer from Los Angeles, and a member of Ernest's family, CHRISTINA, ARECHIGA, California. Once again, we will be discussing the issues surrounding that, and most importantly, the response since. You got any questions tonight, you can join me right here on World Jam Global Radio. Twitter, Facebook, WhatsApp. Participate, contribute. Don't be a spectator tonight. We got it locked down right across the world. This is World Jam Global Radio. It's our time.
Everybody thinks we're wrong. Oh, but who are they to judge us? Simply cause our hair is long. Oh, you know we've got to bring some understanding here today. Pick it black and pick it sight. Don't punish me with brutality. Come on, talk to me. You can see
what's going on.
What's going on? Yeah, what's going on? Tell me what's going on. I'll tell you what's going on.
Once again, another unarmed man shot down in the street.
Right on. Right on.
World Jam Global Radio. This is clarity.
Right on.
Okay. Sounds of Marvin Gaye. What's going on?
World World Jam Global Radio. This is clarity.
Once again, my friends, I'm going to say it again. Tonight we are looking at the shooting, the killing of ERNEST DUENEZ Jr. on June the 8th, 2011. Tonight we have with us our dear friend, Alex Salazar. Are you there, Alex?
I am. How are you, Kervin?
I'm not bad at all. Long time no speak, sir.
Great.
Okay, just give the audience a little bit of a summary about who you are, what you do, and why you're with us tonight.
Well, I'm currently a licensed private investigator in Los Angeles, California. I specialize in all types of investigations, but my background is actually in police litigation cases, that is, investigating police officer-involved shootings of unarmed individuals or people who have had their civil rights violated. I also do a lot of cases trying to help people who've been wrongfully convicted, criminal defense matters. And I've been doing this now for approximately 15 years. I spent almost 10 years with the Los Angeles Police Department. I worked at the infamous Rampart Division Station, a police station that became infamous for winning Denzel Washington, Best Actor, and also the Best Picture for a movie called Training Day. And so it was based on that police station where it was just a really bad environment for police officers and for anyone that would live in that jurisdiction. And of course, it was mainly poor people, Central American refugees, people who were exploited by the police and by heavy-handed law enforcement. And so here I am today. I'm an activist. I'm working with people like CHRISTINA, ARECHIGA, one of our powerhouse activists in the country. She's going to talk about today about the shooting of her cousin, one of the most egregious shootings, terrible shootings that anyone will ever see, what I believe to be a premeditated type shooting. Anyone that sees the shooting can see the combat stance that the police officer took in taking out her cousin. And so I'm going to let you guys kind of talk about that, and then I'll kind of give the police perspective, but I'm very happy to be here with you today.
Thank you very much for that, Alex. And with us, as Alex has already said, is the cousin of the man that was fatally murdered on that particular day. I use the word murdered, and I don't hold back from that, because having watched the video myself, I see that as murder. If I had committed that offence, if I had done that, I'd be on trial for murder. So I call it a murder of ERNEST DUENEZ and none other than CHRISTINA ARECHIGA, and I'm absolutely fantastically happy with myself that I pronounced it right before I heard Alex say it. CHRISTINA ARECHIGA, did I pronounce your name right?
Yes, you did. Thank you very much.
Please do us the honour by introducing yourself and just telling us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you're involved in this.
Okay. Like you said, my name is CHRISTINA ARECHIGA, and I have, been working on the issue of police accountability and oversight in California and the United States since my cousin Ernest was murdered on June 8, 2011. I'm now the West Coast Regional Coordinator for the NAAPB, which is the National Association Against Police Brutality. I work, with community groups that organize on the ground. And again, this is all in response to the murder of my cousin by an officer named John Moody of the Manteca Police Department, and in response to my government's lack of, just being able to do anything about the police in our country. And, it's up to the people to make the change. And of course, it's up to the families who go through this horrific night in the United States to, put an end to it. And so I'm working as hard and as fast as I can so that another family doesn't go through what my family has gone through and continues to go through and will go through for the rest of our lives.
Okay. Well, look, for those who, and I'll treat our audience as blind and ignorant tonight, because not everybody's seen the video, but I've seen the video. Again, I quite openly refer to it as a murder. But I want to, from the video point of view, even before he's shot, this car is situated, parked not too far away from his home, with its internal cameras on. So that to me, they're in an expectant mood. They're anticipating something's going to be going down. But we don't hear no radio. We don't hear no communication. And then the car just takes off and heads straight to his house. Now, was there a prior warrant? Was there a reason for them to be in the street or around the corner, or however, wherever they were when they were close by to the house? Were they on standby to go after him for a reason in the first place? I suppose that's the first question I want to ask you, Christina.
Okay, so at the time that my cousin was murdered, he was on parole, and he had a drug problem, and he had tested dirty, and so his parole officer had put out basically an alert saying, if you come across this guy, bring him in on a parole violation. What had happened that day was, I believe that John Moody, the cop who murdered my cousin, basically just took that as an opportunity to go and murder him, is how I feel. Is the only thing that the whole situation points to. I don't know exactly what the situation was between my cousin and John Moody, but I do know that John Moody had been, prior to my cousin testing dirty on his drug test, had what information I get from the public in that town is that John Moody had been looking for my cousin. He had kicked in a couple of doors when my cousin wasn't even a wanted person, looking for him. He obviously, my cousin, he was calling him by some sort of nickname. He called him Ernie. We don't call him Ernie. His name is Ernest. So they obviously had some sort of a relationship with each other. And, through, the investigation that Alex actually did, part of the investigation for me on the side, in trying to figure out what happened and talk to witnesses and that sort of thing. But I mean, the thing that we can come up with is the fact that my cousin and John Moody knew each other, and that it was something more going on than just, the fact that he was wanted on a dirty P test, because John Moody stood after his shift and murdered my cousin. His supervisor did not even know he was out there. He was not given permission to be out there. He was not assigned to be out there. He can't explain why he's there. It's like he got information on the streets and that's my cousin's house. So if my cousin was trying to hide, he probably wouldn't have went to his own house. So, unfortunately, in the United States and, I'm sure across the world, we have men and women who are in uniform who do things outside of their job of, protecting and serving. And I think that this situation happens to be one where we have a rogue cop, a cop who's into things he shouldn't be into, and it resulted in the murder of somebody. We may or may not ever know exact reasons why. Only John Moody really knows that. And, he's not, remorseful in any sort of way. So, time will tell. There's still people who come out of the woodwork and have a little pieces to the story every single day. And, I just think in this situation, we're dealing with a bad cop who, had a situation and seen an opportunity to, cause harm to Ernest, and he did that.
Okay, Alex, from a police's point of view, right? You're a cop. I mean, you're an ex-police officer. So explain to me what this officer could have possibly been doing, because the camera was rolling. He was sat down there, obviously with his partner, parked up. And
he was by himself.
He was by himself. Okay.
Yes.
So the vehicle was parked up. There it was. Then without no radio call, right? Without no authorization to go and intervene or attack or whatever, he then takes off. Was he at a point where he could actually see the vehicle that Ernest came out of? Was he watching for that vehicle to arrive? And was it at the point of that vehicle arriving that he then moved forward to come in? Try and explain that one to me, because that's the picture I'm trying to create from the video that I've seen.
Well, what we have here, Kervin, is a stakeout. It's a surveillance. In police lingo, they call it a code 5, which is basically watching for someone to arrive. And the police are allowed to do this. Here what we have, though, is an individual, this police officer named Officer Moody, who took it one step. He made it personal. And that's kind of what Christina's alluding here, that there's much more to the story than what meets the eye here, than what was going on here on the estate, because he's sitting there in the car. I've done surveillance stakeouts numerous times as a police officer, waiting for the person and just simply waiting to make an arrest. But there's something more insidious here. The way that he reacted, like Christina said, the guy lived here. This was his home. This is where he lived at with his wife. He wasn't, hiding or anything like that. And so we see the officer sitting there. He's patiently waiting, for Mr. Duenes to arrive for Junior, as the family refers to him. And that's what happens. He then turns on the police cam as he's driving towards the location, and there it just unfolds upon the viewer, whoever's seeing this madness take place. You get these crazy screams, and he's just yelling, "Ernie, Ernie!" I mean, and just very frightening yells. Very, very. You can tell that he is not in control, but he is in control because he knows exactly what he plans to do there from that step. And he's yelling these commands, blood-curdling screams, "Ernie, I'll shoot you, I'll shoot you." And this guy's scared. There was no indication that he was armed. He had a drug issue like so many people all over the country, all over the world, are experiencing. And we're not trying to paint him out to be a saint or anything like that, but this was just simply a drug issue with this parole officer. They put out a be on the lookout, for him, what they call a bolo. And so there was no immediate need to take him in. He hadn't beaten anyone. He hadn't raped anyone. He hadn't killed anyone. He wasn't a menace. He just had a drug problem. And so on that day, we saw the video, which is indeed just very, very extremely graphic, as you see this man killed and shot right before your very eyes. And so here, there's so many things to critique. Number one, if this guy is so dangerous as they tried to paint him out to be, why didn't he have a backup? When I've been out there,
that was going to be my next. Yeah, this is my next question, Alex. Right. So this officer's on a stakeout. I'm assuming that he spotted Mr. Nunez's car or vehicle, or the vehicle that he was riding in, arrive and park up on the lawn by the house where he lived. I'm assuming that that's what he saw that made his vehicle pull out and then pursue. Is not the correct protocol, and forgive me if I'm going to be ignorant here, would not the correct protocol to have been, had there been a bolo out for this fella, was to call that in? And call that into the station. Yes. He's been spotted, and then you get a response or authorization from your sergeant or whatever. Go in or wait, back up. It's on its way or something like that. I'm not in the full knowledge of this, but that just sounds like common sense to me. So, should this officer have called that in? Is that what he should have done first?
Immediately when you see and you're planning on making an arrest, a police officer is required to radio in what's happening. It's called officer safety. Okay. Officer safety is designed to prevent shootings of police officers and also, the general public. And here in this case, this guy knew what he was doing. He was very, intent on taking him himself. And he did not call for backup, as we can see. It's only after shots have been fired that he does make that request, and of course we see it unfurl as it happens before our very eyes.
Okay, Alex, can I just come back to you a minute, Christina? And if we get too close to the nerve for you and it gets emotional, I'm okay. I'm good with that, Christina. But the question I want to ask you is, when as the police arrived. There's obviously, was that his girlfriend? Was that his the girl that came out?
That's his wife.
That's his wife. So his wife was in the house at the time that police arrived. Did she hear anything or see anything other than what we saw her see on that video? Was she alerted before the shots was fired?
No, she wasn't. I guess she just said that she heard the screaming of the cop, and when she heard that, and then she heard, what she thought was gunshots, she ran out.
Right.
Because the door of the entrance is like on the other side of where they were at.
Was she expecting? Yeah, go on, sorry.
So my cousin he had just went to the store with some people. So he was actually in the back seat of the small cab truck.
Okay.
And so when he went to get out of the truck, and the officer's screaming at him, he actually, he was startled, I'm sure, like any human being would in that situation. He was already getting out of the truck, and then his foot got caught in the seatbelt of the truck. So while the officer is like yelling at him, he's actually like falling out of the truck, and he never had 2 feet on the ground before, he was murdered. But that was, his wife, and he had an 11-month-old child at the time. And so she was there with the baby. And, when she came out, I mean, not only did they point guns at her, not only did John Moody point his gun and click towards her, he had already used all his bullets. He had unloaded his whole clip on my cousin. But they arrested her. They took her to jail. They took everybody in the whole house to jail, including like an elderly woman who, used oxygen in a wheelchair. They took everybody to jail. And it's, as we can now see, as the world now sees and now understands, and what's happening in America with our police, they do the best they can to cover it up right away. And part of that is that they try to intimidate any witness or anybody who was around the area, to contain them, to run who they are so they understand, and they can use whatever they have against these people to make sure that they don't come forward and that they don't speak up. And that was, what was done to everybody in that house that day. I do want to say that the thing about them arresting Ernest's wife, her name is Whitney. The thing about them arresting Whitney is that she actually seen them watching the video later on, and that's how we knew there was a video, because they were actually watching the video, and they were, high-fiving John Moody and patting him on the back while they watched him murder my cousin at the Manteca police station. So if she had not, I feel it was God, if she had not been arrested, if she had not been in that situation, as, violating as that was, we may never have known for sure that there was a video. And so from the very first day, we were demanding that the police release the video so that we can see what happened with our own 2 eyes. Because immediately they came out saying that my cousin had a gun and that he advanced towards the officer, and the officer had no other choice but to shoot him dead, is what the police were saying through the media. So, because she did get arrested, we were able to know there was a video and demand that. And the police lied right away. They said there was no video, and it took us 6 months and filing a lawsuit against them from my aunt and my uncle, who's Ernest's parents, to view the video and to come back and give my family the information that indeed Ernest was murdered. He didn't have a weapon, and he not only was murdered, but he was, treated so egregiously as he lay there dying. Yeah. And, that we needed to continue to fight. And that's what we've been doing for 4 years.
Okay. So, one other question before I kind of move this on just a little bit. Because it was quite evident when Ernest left the vehicle, his foot was caught in something. He was hopping, he was trying to get himself free from it, but wasn't being able to get his balance. So he wasn't able to respond to even the request that the police officer was. He couldn't, because his foot was stuck and he couldn't actually get his stability properly. Was there anybody else in the vehicle apart from him?
Yeah, there was actually a man who was driving, an older man, and his wife, who was actually in the front seat. So, they were eyewitnesses to everything that happened. They were in the car. They knew he didn't have a weapon. They knew he didn't have a gun. They knew he didn't have a knife. And, they watched him, be murdered. I mean, the lady was the first shot. It basically, the cop is yelling at him, these different commands, or without even giving him an opportunity to comply. And if you can tell in the video, Ernest is trying to comply. He may be falling out, he may be on one foot, but he's trying to put one hand in the air and he's trying to hold himself with the other hand. And, he's doing the best he can to comply. Before he's even shot the first time, and he shot, and then the window gets blown out, and that, shatters onto the woman who's sitting she's literally sitting in the front seat. If that cop would have, been a little bit off, he could have shot an innocent civilian who, my cousin was an innocent civilian, but he could have shot at somebody else. So they were able to see, the man said that when the first shot hit my cousin, that he had this look on his face, like, what's happening? And then he had just a really confused look on his face.
Okay. So there you have it. For the beginning of the picture, what we're seeing is a police officer who has a personal issue, an agenda. He's parked up. He approaches. There is more than one person in that vehicle, so you can't even try to claim like it was some kind of gangland thing going on, because he had an elderly gentleman with the wife in this vehicle who'd obviously taken him for a ride to the shop. He's then approached as he comes out. Well, approached is a very conservative word. We see the struggle with him and the seatbelt, and before he can even get himself free, he's actually shot down to the ground. But the video finishes before we could see anybody come out of the vehicle. Now, I just want to kind of spin back a bit, because I did tell Alex I was going to come back down to the drug issue, because to me I felt that was significant, because as a support worker I've worked with drug addicts and alcoholics numerous over the years, and in this country we have a very similar issue. When somebody has committed drug-related offences and they're on probation, as we call it here, you call it parole, and they've got to go and do drug tests and provide wee samples, etc. And if they're in breach of that probation or the license that they're on, then a warrant can be issued for their arrest, providing that they're spotted or seen whenever that may be. But there's no emerging officer out on patrol specifically unless the court gives an order to arrest and remand without bail. So here we have this guy who's got a bit of a past, nothing too great or fancy, and now he's actually in breach of his parole, whatever it is, and so there's an order to arrest upon sight, but never before. And I've never seen it, the police actually physically go looking. It's a case of you're spotted on the street, or you're picked up, or your vehicle's stopped for another reason, and then it comes over the radio that there is a warrant out for you. We've never actually visually seen or heard about pursuing somebody. Alex, are we different in the UK to America, or is this normal police practice that if somebody is in violation of a drug parole order, that the police will go gunning for them, go looking for them almost immediately?
Well, it's used. You're hoping that people are going to use common sense here, Kervin, and that doesn't always happen, as we now know. Here, it's the offense of being an addict, okay? And yes, while we know that people who might be under the influence can respond perhaps irrationally or even come back and attack, that was not the case here. The officer, as has been mentioned here, had a relationship here with him, and Mr. Dueñez, Jr. had never, ever exhibited any violent tendencies, that would be able to say, oh, yeah, we got to shoot this guy on sight. And so, he had the upper hand. He had his weapon out. He never once came at him charging. What we did have here was a lot of screaming and yelling. And anyone that gets screamed or yelled at like that, is going to get frightened. Okay, let's just admit that, people will get scared. And so here's, Junior doing what they call the chicken, moving around all over the place, basically trying to escape and get out of there. And we saw, of course, what happened again.
Okay, so with that,
can I add something?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say that in the United States, police officers don't just go out for a parolee like that. They don't. Like you said, it's like when you get pulled over and they run your name and.
Yeah, go on, carry on.
And you have a violation or something like that, then you'll be taken in. So that's not normal practice. I do want to say in regards to John Moody, like I said before, he also was not even authorized to be working at that moment. He had already worked a shift. He wasn't authorized, to be working at that time. And later on, his supervisor in our depositions, said that he was not aware that John Moody or his partner, who's the man who actually hands him the knife in the video, why they were out there, why they were still working. They say, in the depositions that the reason why they were there is because some woman said that my cousin was a parolee, armed and dangerous, and that she seen him with a knife. Yet they were not able to give the woman's name or an address where to find her. They just said that they didn't know who she was or, or where she was at. They had a lot of, we don't know kind of answers. So, I think that, even my cousin's parole officer was deeply, deeply affected by this, and, came to my family on a couple different occasions, really just apologizing and saying that he had no intention. He didn't put out any special instructions. He doesn't know why the police did what they did to Ernest. Okay,
so, and then you have this police officer who upon approach, is shouting at Junior, Ernest, to put down a knife. You hear him several times shout out, "Put down a knife, put down a knife." Was a knife ever found?
So they say that, we can see in the video, there's 27 minutes of video where the cop is searching for a knife after he murders my cousin. He goes so far as to literally strip him down butt naked and look in his, in between his butt cheeks, basically, and under his private parts, looking for a gun. I mean, he strips him down naked in broad daylight, which is a violation of my cousin's rights. And, they never find a knife on the video of 27 minutes. Now, the police say that after they turn the video off, they later find a knife, they say, in the bed of the pickup truck. You can see in the video there's cops all around the bed of that pickup truck. Nobody finds a knife. The only time we ever see a knife near the bed of the pickup truck is when the officer puts it there. He has a knife twice. He once gets a knife and cuts the seatbelt from around Ernest's foot as he drags him, as he then proceeds to drag him while he's dying and moaning, and put him face down in the dirt and handcuff him. That's the first time he had a knife. And the second time we see he has a knife, he is, trying to, I don't know, he's ripping my cousin's shirt open. He doesn't try to perform any CPR or anything like that, so I'm not sure why he's doing that. In my own personal opinion, I believe he was trying to get my cousin's DNA on that knife, because in the police report, they say they find a knife in the bed of the truck with no fingerprints, but has my cousin's DNA on it. And my cousin's DNA was all over that scene. He was shot 13 times in 4 seconds, at a pretty close range. So his blood was everywhere. His DNA was everywhere. And again, right in front of our eyes, there's no knife. But the police say that when they turn off the camera, that they do find a knife. That they want us to believe my cousin had in his hand, and that he threw at 90 miles an hour past the camera so fast that the camera couldn't catch it, and it landed in the bed of the truck, is what they want us to believe, is what the DA put in their report, and the reason why they justified my cousin's killing. The problem with that mostly is that my cousin never had a knife, and that the first shot went into his right forearm, which would have made my cousin's hand and arm completely, unable to be used. He would not have been able to throw anything, even move. His arm was basically like, it was jello. It was just gone, after he was shot that way. So, the thing also is that the John Moody and the cop who gives him the knife, these are two cops who are like cowboys in this town. They're in the news all the time. They're in the press all the time. They're I believe, have this, complex where they just think that they're untouchable in this really small town who's mostly white people. But, it's a town that my family, grew up in. It's where we went to school. It's our home. But, you have these, small town cops who, I believe maybe, whatever happened to my cousin never hurt an officer. He never assaulted an officer. Maybe he ran from them sometimes. They would always end up catching him. But there was nothing to indicate that my cousin would have tried to harm somebody. And I think it was retaliation for something. Who knows? Maybe he ran away from them. These cops have really big egos. These cops, as you can see, you can't even, ask them a question on camera without them wanting to snatch somebody's camera out of their hand and try to throw cuffs on them and try to abuse them. So you can imagine somebody who ran away from them or made them look stupid in front of their colleagues, or virtually anything. You can't even talk to an officer without them, mistreating you. So I just really think that it all boils down to, just something that this officer, he thinks he's above the law, which they are, as we know that, and and just handle things the way he wanted to handle them, and some sort of payback. Because when I see that, I see some sort of a payback or some sort of a personal issue. And everything that I've investigated and found out, there's something not right there in that relationship. Ernest cannot tell us, and John Moody, isn't going to be truthful. So I don't think it's just a normal case of a parolee being pulled over and him being armed and dangerous and him being shot. He wasn't trying to do suicide by cop. He had an 11-month-old child. He was at actually a really good place in his life. And I know that he tested dirty, but, he was at a point where he was, doing a lot better than he had before in previous years. So nothing makes sense to me except for the fact that this was some sort of a personal vendetta, and that happens, with people.
Okay. Alex, just to add a little more to this knife situation, the way that this officer is shouting, "Put the knife down! Put the knife down!" That is to give the impression that the officer has seen a knife. You can't just say put the knife down if there is no knife, or somebody told you that he might have a knife. I would imagine as an officer you'd be asking, have you got a weapon, and if you've got a weapon, put it down. But he's shouting, and the way he's yelling, put that knife down, is to give the impression that he actually has a knife that's visible in his hand, even though we can't see it. Would you agree with that?
I do, yes.
But at no time do we see any flash or any blade or anything reflecting off of sunlight that might suggest that he had anything in his hand at all. And in fact, as his one hand was raised and his other hand was trying to keep himself balanced, all you could see was this, the other leg trying to jostle its way out of a seatbelt. So
that's correct.
So for
yes,
me,
that is correct.
Go on.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Alex.
Well, he has tunnel vision. He's stuck in the moment. He's focused on the personal animosity that's going on between him, that was going on way prior to this. Like Christina mentioned, the parole officer even was very extremely apologetic, because he knows that this should have never gone to the extent of what had happened here. And so Mr. Moody was already there with the intent to kill, as he's saying, drop the knife, when it's obvious he doesn't have the knife. Now, it's pretty hard sometimes, of course, for us to sit back here and to view a video after it's happened. And that's often the cliche that the police will use of individuals to armchair quarterback the situation. But here it's not just that situation here. Again, this was personal, and this is where I have a lot of reservations with that. Christina has pretty much laid them out as they are. Okay,
so there you have it. He's now been shot 13 times.
And also, let me just add something really quick for the viewers. The police are saying that the knife that they found was 8 inches long. So that's a pretty large knife for the viewers to miss.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, again, I saw the video and I was absolutely gobsmacked. Now, 13 shots. 13 shots to what we now know to be an unarmed man. And even if, let's just say, for example, he did have a knife in his hand, is 13 shots still not an overkill? Alex?
Most definitely. And not only that, the officer had his vehicle he could have, stood behind. He had a vehicle, that weighs over a ton. He had metal and doors and a whole front end of a car in front of him that he could have protected himself with if he felt that he was in danger. And
okay, so Alex, what is the correct protocol? An officer comes to the scene, and then upon trying to arrest or detain an individual, he believes he sees what is to be a weapon. What is the correct protocol?
Well, a police officer is supposed to abide by what they call an acronym that they teach us in the academy called IDLE. IDLE is immediate defense of life. Okay, so in other words, what that's trying to say is that if you fear in your mind that you're about to be killed or be hurt, then you have that right to protect yourself. That's why they give them the guns. But here, there's no, I mean, again, from my perception, from where I'm seeing it, and just knowing the background on this case, that did not appear to be the situation here. And so 11 shots is definitely, in my opinion, overkill. You mesh that in with the adrenaline that this guy had and the fact that he probably wanted to get involved in a shooting because there are cowboy-type officers who, in the second that they take someone down or beat them up or whatever, they're doing the high-five thing or the shooting. They're glorified. They're given tattoos for breaking arms, for killing people out here in Los Angeles. I mean, it really is an ego trip type situation.
Okay, so he's now shot him 13 times. And now his wife has come out of the door. More importantly, once he'd approached, would you have expected him, upon seeing a weapon, to have stepped back, either behind his vehicle or to give himself some distance between him and the assailant, or because what I saw was him going forward towards him? With the gun, would that have been correct police procedure? Because I would imagine you've approached the scene that you believe that the fellow to be armed. Is the correct protocol not to step back and to protect yourself, either behind your vehicle and wait for backup? You know where he is at his house.
Well, ideally in this situation, looking at it again, that is what we would like to say. But here, this man totally, it appears, just violated all rules of engagement in dealing with a so-called violent person and just blasted at him. There was no thinking. There was no common sense or approach to this matter. He didn't call for backup. And at no point do I see a knife or anything being lunged. What I do see is a very scared individual and him being executed by our very eyes.
Okay, here's another question out of the... from our viewers, our listeners. Didn't Ernest have to visit his probation officer regularly, and couldn't he have been taken by an officer on his next visit? Anyone can answer that one. Christina, Alex, did Ernest have to visit his probation officer regularly, and if so, couldn't he have been taken by an officer on his next visit?
Yeah, he did have to visit his officer. I'm sorry, I'll just let, as far as him specifically, and he actually had been, he actually was going to be reporting to a drug rehab, and because he only had, in California, you can max out on your parole, right? So whatever your sentence is, that you can't go beyond that. Right. So he only had 30 days left on his parole, and then there's nothing that he was off parole. He was discharged. Wow. So he was going to go to a treatment center for 30 days. Okay.
Had he done any sentences in prison, and what's the longest sentence he's had, and what for, if you don't mind me asking?
He pretty much has been in prison in and out, his adult life. And again, in California, United States, the land of incarceration, a lot of it was just for parole violations. Right. He had a drug problem. And so, a lot of his cases were, theft and drugs. And again, he had a problem we need to address in our country and around the world. And that's why I'm a very big proponent of, legalizing all drugs, just as they've done in Portugal. And so that we don't have these issues where we are killing people over, an illness. Yeah.
I mean, we have a similar issue here in the UK, and we have a huge problem with drugs and alcohol in particular. And a lot of new legislation and sentences have been set aside now for drug-related offences. Short-term rehab and sort of like detoxes have been set up, enforced, and they call it I forget what they call it now, but it's basically where the court demands that you go into rehab and go and do a detox to give you an opportunity to clean yourself up and not keep getting into trouble.
Well, in California, we have a very large correctional officers union, and prison is big money, and so there's a lot of opposition to really helping people get true rehabilitation. I can say that I've worked, prior to my cousin being murdered, I worked for 15 years in prison reform. There is no such thing as rehabilitation in the Department of Corrections in California. It's just warehousing people, labeling them as a gang member or not, letting them, live with that jacket, of a gang member for the rest of their lives. And, basically making career criminals is what the state of California is pretty much about. So one other thing I wanted to add is you said, John Moody was out of control. I really think that what happens here, my cousin and the video and everything that we have really just shows though, that the police think that they will do things like this, and then they think they can get away with it.
Yeah.
And that's why I think John Moody really cared. I think John Moody thought, and he knew he would get away with it, as he has gotten away with it as far as being in a court of law. And I think that really what my cousin's video does is, one, it's a really great case on why we need to have cameras on our officers and their vehicles at all times. Because what they say and what really happened is two completely different things. They wanted it to make it sound like the officer was just in so much danger he didn't have a choice. That wasn't the case. We would have never known that. My family would have had to live with the fact that, my cousin had a gun, or, even though in our hearts, we knew that wasn't his character, to come at an officer like that, or to put himself in that situation. So I just think that Ernest's case is just a really great example of how police officers treat people when they pull them over, when they, yelling things so that drop the knife so that everyone who's around can think that the person has a knife and the officer was justified. These are all tactics that the police are using to basically get away with murder and abuse citizens and violate their rights on a daily basis in our country. Every 7 hours, someone is being murdered by the police in our country now. And, this is what you see on the camera with my cousin is exactly what's happening in all of these cases that we don't have, video coverage on, which is people are being murdered, the police lie, and they get away with it. In this case, it just so happened that we got the video. We were able to prove that. And, and we have documentation. And we know that our fight is righteous, and that, we have a responsibility to the world and to our fellow citizens to speak up about this issue, because we have that video and we know that what the police are doing is not right.
Okay, so here we are. We have this video. I've seen it, you've seen it, and possibly, but now that it's on YouTube and everywhere else, half the world must have seen it by now. I haven't seen how many views it's had. I haven't counted that. I was just too engrossed in watching it myself to check into those details. So if this video is readily available, and the evidence on this video is as clear as I see it, right? Why are we having this conversation? Why I don't mean to disrespect what we're doing here, because I love doing this, but then I cannot understand why somebody hasn't gone, look at this, we need to do something about this. And I mean, I'm talking about somebody in authority. I'm not talking about the likes of me, you, and Alex. We're here trying to say something, trying to do something. But there is somebody in authority who's seen this video, must be saying, we can't just ignore this. Surely there must be somebody in power, in authority, saying we can't ignore this.
Well, I think that the problem is that that the police are given so much money to our elected officials, that, they just look the other way, and that they don't want to, do this tango with the police. That, there's this sick mentality that the police are, some sort of heroes, and that, no politician and no, anybody who's a so-called leader wants to be the person who challenges that notion. And as far as the district attorneys go, they're just so wrapped up with the police. There's just no way for them to be able to, prosecute these guys. And even where we see where a DA actually does prosecute or file charges, like in New Mexico, we see the police union, who is a very strong union. They're strong because they use our tax dollars to be strong, are hacking the district attorney, and then in turn not allowing the district attorney information on other cases, other murders, and other crimes that are happening in the county as punishment for doing their job in prosecuting officers. So it's a sick scenario that we have, that nobody is willing to call out the police, and that they just want to live in this world where the police are the heroes, and and that goes unchallenged. I do have to say though that I think 4 years later, after my cousin's been murdered now, that the people see things in a different way. And had this happen now, after we have Mike Brown and the country is so much more awake and the world is so much more awake to what's happening, we might have had a different outcome as far as the officer, being prosecuted. And I work every single day at trying to make that happen. And, we have no statute of limitations on murder. And, I do hope to see John Moody in a court of law at some point.
Alex, is there any likelihood of John Moody being in court? Hi, Alex.
Yes, I'm sorry, I put it on mute here. Things are really changing, as Christina mentioned. There's more attention now to what's happening. As we look to the state of South Carolina, where that young man, Dylan Roof, killed these 9 black people, we also have the police officer by the name of Michael Slager who killed Walter Scott. Walter Scott is another classic Ernesto Dueñez case, okay, because here you had another filming, not by the police, but by a citizen of a white man shooting a black man in the back several times and then going over to him and planting a taser to make it look like he had tried to attack. So he planted one of his own weapons on this person as he's dying. And of course, here we have a situation where it was caught on tape, as many of these other cases are being dealt with today. They're there, caught on film. And so there's this awareness now of what's going on, and these police officers are now being challenged. In fact, I was looking at an article earlier that there's a so-called expert out there that's saying, why are police officers being demonized? But you have, as Christina mentioned, these very powerful unions and that aren't going to admit that there are an extreme inordinate amount of what they like to call bad apples in there. Rather, it's a culture, this culture where they feel that they can get away with it. But all that is changing.
Okay. So, Christina. Hi, Christina.
Yes.
So, earlier on you said that apart from once Ernest had been shot down, members of the family and a whole pile of them were taken away to police stations and jail, etc. Were any of them charged with anything?
No, they weren't.
Nobody was charged. And how long were they held for?
I'm not exactly sure, and I know it was several hours.
Okay.
Maybe into the next day.
And did the police give any reason as to why they felt the need, having shot a family member down dead on the street, that they would cart off as many as they did for no reason and then let them go? Did they give any reason?
I think that as the people want to believe that in the situation the police would be empathetic to the fact that your loved one was just murdered and the fact that one of their officers did that and tried to smooth over the situation. But that's really not the case. When your loved one is murdered in the United States and in California, the police treat you like a criminal, and they don't feel like they don't need to explain anything to you. They feel like they are God. I mean, unless you've been in their custody and in the situation, I don't think you really understand how scary it is and, how intimidating they make it, so that you don't speak up and they don't want you to have rights. So no, they didn't give any explanation. They wouldn't let my family see Ernest's body. When my aunt, where Ernest was murdered at literally is like 3 houses away from the main hospital in that town. Okay. Like if you just go 3 houses to the left, you can see at the corner is the hospital. He could have been on an operating room table in 30 seconds. But I really feel that they were letting him, John Moody, went there to kill him and, wasn't going to try to save his life. My aunt begged them to let her touch her son while he was still warm because they took him to the hospital there. And, they basically treated my aunt like she was a criminal and, refused to even, allow my family to see his body, to properly identify him or anything like that. Until he was at the morgue. And it's just cruel and really calculated and really, Nazi tactics that are being used against, the people and then their families. innocent victims in this, and it's really sad. It's really gross. It's something that breaks my heart.
Yeah. How do you both of you can answer that question one after time, and I'll ask you first, Chris. How do you account for the way that Ernest was treated, and yet the white man who killed 9 black people was taken safely, almost delicately, no scratches on him?
Well, I contribute that to racism, and when my cousin was murdered, it was said so many times that he was just another N-word. People thought he was black, but he wasn't. He's just really dark. And they're just, as we see happening time and time again in our country, black lives do not matter to police officers or people, a lot of white people and a lot of people in power. And that's one of the main reasons why I personally, have been, a leader in the movement for Black Lives Matter, because I truly understand that until Black Lives Matter, then none of ours do. So many people were willing to just brush Ernest's murder under the rug just for the fact of looking at it saying, well, he's a black man. And that is something that will always stay with me. And and I'm a very big proponent on having discussions about race, white supremacy in our country, which we know, and realistically, this is the reason why we have police forces to begin with. We want to look back at our history in America on why the police exist. They were once slave catchers. That's how we got police. They were never a system. This has never been a system that's been built to protect a black man or a person of color, period. It's always been a system to catch and kill, incarcerate, and harm a black person and now all people of color in our country. So we have a race problem in America. We have a problem with not being able to discuss the issue and call it everything else under the sun. But the problem is that the United States is a very racist country, and as we've seen, it's taken these murders over and over and over and over again for us to really, even be able to even mention these words and media even talking about race at all. So,
what was the community response? The people local to Junior's house, what was their response? Was there an outcry? What was their response to this killing right on their doorstep?
I mean, I think that you had two different responses. You had the response of, because like I said, we moved to this area when we were about 11 years old.
Okay.
Ernest and I were 6 months apart. He was 34 when he was murdered.
Okay.
We grew up in that area. We actually grew up in the next town over, but it's like literally right across the railroad tracks. And in Manteca, where he was murdered, is basically the bigger town that has the stores and all that kind of stuff. So, we grew up there. That was our home. So we know a lot of people. Our family is, well known in the area. So anybody who knew our family, anybody who had ever come in contact with us or Ernest, of course was there for us. But for the majority, that town is mostly white people. And, they're content with feeling that there was somebody dangerous in their streets and the police did what they needed to do to protect them. And I that's where we see a lot of this happening. I do have to say that over the years, though, I think that as the video came out, as those sort of things, I think that we have won over a lot of people who seen our determination and us keeping up the fight. My family protested in front of the police station for about 3 years every single Sunday, where people in this town would see my family, my aunt and my uncle and Ernest's, child, from the time he was 1 year old on, with a sign in front of the police station, sometimes all by themselves, sometimes with crowds, but people seen them, trying to get justice. And I think that, after the video came out and everything, people were more, they felt bad for my family. But again, we have the society that doesn't want to speak up against the police.
Okay. Tell us a little bit more about Ernest. I want to know about Ernest, the Ernest that you knew.
He was 34 years old when he was murdered by John Moody. He was a new father. He had one child, Dominic. He had a wife, and he has two brothers and two sisters. He was the oldest son of my aunt and my uncle. He was the oldest, boy in a family of 60 plus grandkids, mostly all girls. He was hilarious. He had a ridiculous laugh that could make anybody else laugh. He was always pulling practical jokes on us. He was always protecting us. He was a protector. He was just, to us, he was that person. He was the person who cracked the jokes and made us laugh and made everything not so serious. He was ours, no matter what the police thought about him or what society thought about him or what media wanted to say about him. Like, he was ours. He may have gone to prison and done prison sentences, but that was something that my family dealt with as a whole. That was something that we went through, not just Ernest. It was something that we all went through. We all went through visiting him. We all went through trying to help him get off of the drugs. We all went through trying to make sure he had employment and housing. We all went through that. So when people want to say that he was a parolee and he was, whatever it is that the media wants to say and focus on, I take that really personally, because I personally sacrificed my life. My aunt and my uncle and my cousins personally sacrificed parts of their lives to make his life better, to make his life, easier, and to help him and to help, the burden that, he was putting as far as being incarcerated. We did everything. We were good people. And I think that, Ernest was so much more, and as I'm sure so many other people are who are murdered by the police, than what the media tries to portray them as. And for us, he will always just be, the clown of our family who, we miss so much. And we haven't had laughter the way that he brought it to us, since he was murdered. He's sorely missed and deeply loved. And we just want justice for him. It's not right that his life was taken for no reason whatsoever. It's not right that his son has to grow up without a father, and that his son, one day will have to, view this video. It's not fair that my aunt and my uncle, have to, live out the rest of their days, with these images in their minds. It's just not right what happened to him. And, he was better than that, and he deserves justice in some form. And if we can't get John Moody in prison, then, I have a commitment to him that I'm going to change the laws that allow police officers like John Moody to get away with murder.
I know that was pretty emotional for you, and you really gave us a description of a young man that many of us will know or know someone like. You gave us the description of somebody's son, somebody's brother, somebody's cousin, somebody's father, somebody's friend, somebody's work colleague, who just had a bit of a drug problem, and because of that got himself into trouble every now and again. But he wasn't a community nuisance. He wasn't a pest. He didn't go around burgling people's houses next door to his house. He was just somebody that had made a couple of bad turns, but had promise and potential. Alex, you have come across in your career as a law enforcement officer many individuals like that, and some of them that have even turned their lives round. How do you feel as when you hear Christina talk about her cousin in such a way that taking away the problems of drugs, that could have just been your brother or your cousin that she was describing. She wasn't describing a bad man. She wasn't describing a gangster. She wasn't describing somebody that the family had tired of. She wasn't describing somebody that people had tried over and over and over again to reach and couldn't get through to. She was actually describing somebody that was very communicative, somebody that was very loved, and somebody that interacted with all their family members because they were all aware of where he was, who he was, and what he was going through. How does that make you feel when you hear this from Christina as a former law enforcement officer, and especially what approach would you have taken had it been you responding to a call like that?
Well, I've known Christina now for a couple years, and Christina, I will tell you, has the biggest heart in the world. Everything that you're hearing from this woman is 100% and genuine. What we have here is the demonization of a human being. Kervin, the way that law enforcement tried to make out, Junior, I mean, he was loved. And that's what life is about. It's about loving people and accepting people through all their screwed up ways and deficiencies. There's always a black sheep in the family. I know for a while after I left law enforcement, and even to this day, I'm the black sheep. Because I did some really dumb things, and I continue to make mistakes as a human being. But yes, Junior was very, 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 very much loved. And this police department, Manteca, has learned that Ernesto Dueñez wasn't just another person. He was a beloved family member, and this family is like many families across the world in this country that would go to the extreme of trying to make sure that their loved one's name and memory wasn't just thrown to the ground. And so Christina is such a person that I feel sorry to a small extent for this officer, because to her very day she will mention the name. Last days, I wanted to say, the one of her last words will be John Moody, making sure that he got his, whichever way things happen, because this guy needs to remember that there's people out there that will never ever forget for what they did to this man, and the desecration of his body, being treated like some wild game, ripping up the shirt and things like that. And I was a police officer. I saw ugly things happen. I had to shoot at people too, but it was when people were shooting back at me. And so we see so many of these cases of overreaction here in Los Angeles. We have another case in the news where a white guy this time, who had his arm wrapped with a towel. I guess there was something wrong with him. He had hurt himself, and the officers yelling at him all crazy, like, put the gun down, put your arm down, or whatever. And he didn't, because there was something wrong with him, and he shoots the guy. Thank God he lived, though. And so you're seeing a lot of overreaction, a lot of fear from these police officers, which perhaps be attributed to bad training. There's a lot of stress. There's a mentality out there that better be tried by 12 than to be carried by 6. In other words, they're willing to kill someone, go to court instead of dying. I mean, that's kind of like a weird way of thinking. But my belief is, and because, like I said, I've been involved in shootings, and I've had to shoot at people. Thank God I never killed anything or anyone. But it's a mentality that needs to be addressed. And that's what's happening here, is that in the United States, we are not talking about these things because there is so much fighting and arguing. And there really is a bad problem with post-traumatic stress disorder in law enforcement. We have a lot of guys from the military, men and women, who are coming back, and because they're heroes and the American public wants to view them as heroes, and they are heroes, but they're coming back really screwed up from having seen some really bad things. I was reading the news yesterday, and a Marine Corps guy had to go out there and execute an Iraqi because, this Iraqi was supposedly one of the bad guys of the neighborhood out there that was defending his land. And so in a way to get this guy to stop from doing what he was doing, they just went out and executed him. And one of the persons that was there testifying on his behalf was trying to justify, while in combat, you have to do these type of things. And so this is the mentality that's being brought back to law enforcement, where there's some really barbaric ways of thinking. During the LAPD years, when we had the crash units, not sure if you ever saw the movie Colors with Robert Duvall and Sean Penn. Okay, that was based upon a real true life unit called the Crash Unit, Community Resources Against Street Hoodlums, whose jobs were to go out there and supposedly clean up the streets. But it went far, far beyond what anybody ever thought. There was tortures, there was beatings, there was gun plantings, there was murders, of course, that went unchallenged for years until we had a police officer who went rogue. And that goes back, that very rarely, are these police officers challenged because of the code of silence. The code of silence is what continues to feed into a lot of these incidents where you have these police officers committing crimes, and then when you have a good cop, someone that has a conscience, and they say, oh my gosh, I can't believe this, or maybe they participated before in the past, but then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, they decide to do the right thing, they are then treated like pariahs, as Frank Serpico out here in New York was many, many years ago for coming forward and talking about what was totally evident to everyone. It was what they call the elephant in the room. Police officers on the take, police officers taking money from the pimps, from the bookies, from the drug dealers, and then the money went all the way up. And Frank Serpico was like, what the heck is this? And he didn't buy into it, and neither are other officers, good officers that are out there who have a conscience, whether it's out there in the UK or here in the United States. There are good officers, and those officers are almost in a position of duress where they are told, you better shut up or you're going to put yourself in a dangerous position. Out here we have a guy by the name of Joe Crystal, a personal good friend of mine who was demonized for coming forth here in Baltimore, Maryland, a year and a half prior to Freddie Gray getting killed. He came out and he testified against two of his partners for beating a black arrestee, and they were convicted. Yet Joe Crystal was not treated as a hero cop. He was in fact, considered a rat, and they put a dead rat on his car. He saw that he wasn't going to get backing from the chief, and so Joe left. Today he continues in his endeavors to talk about what's going on here and to actually do something about this, because this country is very much on a boiling point. People are tired of this. People do not believe the police. I would love to say, that I believe in the police, but right now you don't know who you're going to get. If you're going to get some psycho during a traffic stop that just might all of a sudden go off because you don't answer his questions the way that you should. And then he looks at you and he thinks to himself, oh, we have a troublemaker here. And automatically, if you make some sort of furtive movement, it could be reason and justification for them to kill you or beat the crap out of you. And that's what we've been seeing here in recent times.
Okay, listen, here's a throwaway question here for you, right? Here in the UK, wherever you are, people complain about stuff. They're never happy with what they got. And probably here in the UK, they still complain. But in the UK, we have what's called an armed response unit. So most of our police officers don't have armed weapons, right? They have a truncheon, most of them might have a taser or something, but they don't have guns. What we do have is we have an armed response unit, and only where there are threats of arms or potential threats of arms or people known to carry arms are the arms response units sent out. People who have a dangerous reputation, who are known to be violent, who are known not to want to resist arrest and who are likely to cause a problem. Only then are the armed response unit sent in to back up the other officers, and in the most serious of cases would be the first ones to go in. Could that not work in the USA?
I believe it could, and that should be the model that we would address. But there are so many damn gun nuts out there. We have the NRA. They have this motto: "You'll take my gun when you pry my dead cold hands," or whatever. I forget what the cliche is, but it's really strong that they will die first before you take their weapons. And so you have this element that's out here that, you cannot take my gun away. Yet, as the president of the United States said yesterday, we need to have a serious talk about weapon ownership, because there's so many loose cannons out there, people that are just really quick to use their gun to kill people and to take that threat out. And I'm for people having a weapon if they're mentally sound, mentally stable, and they're responsible. But not the person, I hear someone at my door, they must be trying to come in here, and all of a sudden they kill someone. People here in the United States are, and especially the black population, in light of the tragic shooting this past week, they're now arming up. Okay, so where's this all heading? More people getting weapons, whether it's the police or these right-wing nuts or the kooks or just the regular people themselves. That we're definitely becoming a fear-driven state. I would love to be able to see this country become like the United Kingdom and other progressive governments that they can use. The police can use their weapons, but out here in California and all the other states, there'd probably be some sort of major riot or civil war if we were even to try to attempt to do that. But yes, I would love to see that happen.
I also would like to see the police not have guns, like you're saying, maybe a certain response team that would have guns. I don't understand why they all need to have guns. But I also want to say that I think that, the police, their narrative, it pushes a lot of things that happen in our country. They're taught from the beginning, protect your life is in danger. These weapons will save you. You gotta have them. And I think it's that mentality. And the reason why I'm pushing for, civilian oversight commissions is so that our communities can have a hand in what the police officers are being trained. The police officers then take that mentality, scared every single day. If you listen to their families are, my father, my husband, he risks his life. Well, in actuality, police officers don't have the most dangerous job in our country. They don't even have the most top 10 dangerous jobs in our country. Their lives aren't at risk as much as they think, or their families or the societies think that their lives are at risk.
In fact, it's actually been proved that being a cop is now safer than in 125 years. And it's not even in the top 10 most dangerous jobs. And in fact, more than half of the cops that do die in car wrecks from their fast and crazy driving. Is that not the fact?
So that is definitely a fact, and it's something that I bring up all the time. And I want to know from our lawmakers, what are they doing to make these officers safer in their cars? What measures are they taking? These are measures that don't cost us anything, probably, really, compared to the bullets and the guns and the tanks and all the other stuff that we're putting in our departments. If an officer's life is really that valuable to the city, to the state, then what are they doing to prevent the thing that kills the officers the most? They're doing nothing about it. So that only tells me that all the other, BS that we get on the reasons why police must be armed and must be, killing people in the streets is really just propaganda, and that we can't trust that because they don't really mean what they're saying. They don't really care about police officers' lives. They only care about protecting the status quo, about protecting police officer unions, and about putting money into, the pockets of the people who are making money off of the situation. In America, it's all about money. We're a capitalistic society, and it's about these gun manufacturers and these people who are making the tasers, who are making the cameras, who are making, you don't think that our police officers and our law and our leaders don't have stock in this? Of course they do. Many people who have a say-so in our country, with deep pockets, get those pockets filled up by incarcerating people. So, this is a much bigger issue. And we can see that if people just open their eyes and say, if you care about a police officer's life so much, well, let's get some vehicle safety. But we don't see that. We see, officers' lives mean so much. We should just let them kill whoever they want and never ask questions about it. And that's something that I'm not willing to accept.
Okay, so here in the UK, we also have a Police Complaints Commission and a police review, and on every occasion where a firearm is used or an individual is killed or shot, there is an immediate investigation. Now, we don't always agree that it's been done correct, etc., but 9 times out of 10, if a police has been found to be in breach of his protocol, he's normally reprimanded somehow. But we're not hearing that. Here in the UK, we're not hearing that coming out of the States. It almost sounds like policemen almost have a license to shoot, kill, and get away with it. What can we do to stop this absolute madness? What could be done? Alex?
Well, we need to do what we're doing right now, Kervin, along with Christina. She is such a powerful speaker, as you can tell, just full of passion and the story behind this woman, how she is nonstop. I mean, she breathes this literally day in and day night. I mean, every week it seems like she's talking to a new family or someone that's been hurt, and she's there all the time to lend a ear as to what's happening and what they're going to have to expect, of course. But the conversation needs to really be addressed without us getting very angry and losing control, which unfortunately, if you look at the press, the media situation throughout the United States, you can see the people that are in denial, the people that are really mad here in dealing with these problems and things like that. Today, earlier, I was talking to another activist who was, discussing the whole situation with, how the white people are responding to this whole matter, to this situation. And basically, if I can just show you really quick what she says, that tensions are so high right now, white people are finally being forced to wake up, and the white people don't like it. They don't want to see or admit that we continue to have some serious racism issues. Us white people don't like to be reminded of the wrongs of our ancestors, because it reminds us that those wrongs are instilled in us at a very early age, and that cycle continues with every generation to the point that it's normal. Okay, this is normal. All this forced awakening infuriates the white people because it's making them question their own upbringing. And so that's what we're dealing with here. There's some serious brainwashing. This young man that went out there and killed all these beautiful people, old people that had already lived their lives, and young that were just getting started. He didn't become that way overnight. We created this monster, okay? Just like we created Christopher Dorner and other people and other individuals. And I don't mean to lump Christopher Dorner in with this person. He did what he felt was right, just like this crazy kid is thinking, oh, what I'm doing is right too, killing black people, right? And so we need to have this discussion. And again, I'm so honored to be able to say that I know this beautiful woman here on a personal level, to be able to talk about these issues, because she really knows how to put it there in a way that makes sense. And so if we can do this and have these discussions, these jam radio sessions with the world, I mean, this is where it is. This is where it begins, where ex-bad cops like me can work with people like Christina. And this woman showed me a lot of love, a lot of respect. She's helped protect me out there because, cyberspace is a mean world, as you know. And we need to be able to work in this kind of environment where rather than, bringing each other down, we're building each other up.
I would also
go
like
ahead.
to add to that is that I think that we need to do away with the Police Officers' Bill of Rights in the United States. California was the first state to enact an Officers' Bill of Rights in 1976. Governor Brown, also at the time, put it, into place. And we have the shame of being the first state. As California does, the rest of the country follows, and so it did, in allowing officers to have this Bill of Rights that protects them. Originally was put in place to protect them so that that they weren't harmed from their job, but now it allows them the license to kill. So we definitely need to do away with that. We need ex-police officers to come forward. I think that's a very big part of this fight is police officers like Alex, to step forward, because they know that what we're saying is true and they can be witnesses. And that's what I feel like, I basically have been doing. As an analogy, on I don't know if you've seen Breaking Dawn, the Twilight series, but for your listeners who are listening, in Breaking Dawn, to prove, what they were saying was true, they had to go out all over the world and gather witnesses. And I really feel that that's what I've been doing for like 4 years now, is gathering witnesses, people who can truly say, I've been there and I've seen it and I know that what's happening is wrong. And as much it takes patience to go year in and year out without justice. But as I've done that, I have realized that gathering these witnesses together, gathering the experiences of these people together, is ultimately what has helped me get, headway in calling for change. And in the city I live in, Sacramento, I've been working with my city leaders. I don't trust a politician as far as I can throw them. But I do recognize the fact that if I want justice, and I said this from the beginning, I'm willing to do whatever to get justice. And if that means work with the ex-police officer, if that means, go to my city council meetings and sit down with my city council members and put their feet to the fire until they come up with something that, that the public can utilize to stop these things from happening, which is something we just recently did in Sacramento just this week. We have been working on a plan, both the community and our city leaders, and creating a community police commission that will oversee and be able to have the officers have some sort of accountability in our city. And so, we continue to press forward. Every, little thing that we do we have to count as a victory at this point in getting some sort of oversight and accountability. But it takes patience, and it takes people, like Alex, like Joe Crystal, like Frank Serpico, to continue to, do the right thing. And so I call on other officers who are out there who know that what is happening is wrong to step up to the plate and to do the right thing and to, stop this from happening in their departments.
Okay, listen. Just on a quick note, and again, my producer wants this to be put in, and she says, "Please use this." Now, the white man that killed 9 blacks at the church earlier this week said that he wanted to start a race war, and we must keep in mind that we do not let this happen. And also, last night, apparently, the Confederate flag was shot down from the South Carolina state capitol. We don't actually want to give the guy the race war that he wants, but it also sounds like the police are already developing a line of sand, drawing a line down the middle, and creating that division anyway. How do we stop a race war from building in the U.S. when it seems so inevitable that there are individuals hell bent on making that happen?
I mean, I think that, a race war was started a long time ago, on black people and people of color. And I think that, this kid isn't starting a race war. He's a product of a race war. And I think that, we have to be realistic and understand that me as an indigenous person of this country, I take personal responsibility that on the land of my ancestors, black people had been treated so egregiously from the time that they were, enslaved, into our country. And I think it's, it's something that we just got to talk about. And if it has to blow up in our face, then so be it. I mean, I'm ready. I think that a lot of people in this country are ready to just be over with this already. And what it's going to take, I really feel it's going to take our white allies. It's going to take white people themselves to stand up and say, we are not going to be a part of this. And we don't accept this, and we want this to stop. And, I really feel that that's what it's going to take. But we need to have this conversation, and it needs to, come out. It needs to unfold, because I know personally I don't have children, but I don't want to see my niece and my nephews and other people that I love, having to go through this, for generations to come, where you feel the way you do in this country being a person of color. I'm a very light person of color, and yet I face discrimination and racism, on a daily basis, and it's just not right. And we have to put an end to it. And if that means, it ramping up before that happens, then at this point, I think all of us are just ready to get it over with, and let's deal with it.
Do you think that decriminalizing drugs, for example, would have made any difference in your cousin's case?
I definitely think that we need to take a look at the way that we treat, people who are drug addicts. And I think that we need to take a look at the way that we treat people who are parolees. I definitely think that, we need to stop criminalizing drugs. The war on drugs is a faux war. It's not a real war. The war on drugs is a way to incarcerate the most people that they possibly can, and make the most money. And that's just the reality of it. Because, we are an advanced society, or we want to believe we are, yet we can't figure out a solution to this problem. Other countries are showing us the way, but yet, we refuse to look at best practices that are happening across the world because we think we're the United States and we're so perfect. We're not perfect by a long shot. We cause a lot of problems in this world, and we need to look at other people who are doing things better than we are. And I definitely think that not only the drug problem, but the way that we treat parolees as if their lives don't matter. If you go to jail, jail is not a day in the park. It's not a picnic. It's something that you survive. And if you survive jail and you're out and you're doing what you should be doing, for the most part, you should be, you should be allowed to come back into society and be treated like a normal human being. Unfortunately, in our country, that's not the way that it is. And if you really seen how parolees are treated, it's really impossible for them to get jobs the way that their parole officers treat them, the way the system treats them, the way that it's just basically set up for failure from the moment they get out of prison. And so, we need to value the lives of those people that we are incarcerating, and we need to take more ownership of their rehabilitation and their success coming back into society. I think that's more than the drugs. As far as my cousin's case goes, I think that the parolee issue was the issue that, got him in that situation. But most definitely, like I said before, I'm a proponent of legalizing all drugs, at least decriminalizing them in our country.
So how do you think that Fox News and the Republicans, for example, play into the race issue?
The Republicans? I don't. I mean, yeah, they're nuts. I mean, I think that we have this this fake belief in Christ in our country that the Republicans try to use to condone and justify the words that come out of their mouths and their actions that they take. I think that they're at this point, I think that you see in our country just blatant racism, even from our elected officials. And like Alex is saying, it's to them, it's normal. They don't see anything wrong with it. And I think that we're at a really scary point because I think that a lot of these people who are racist, in our government, are really trying to make it, they're not even trying to hide it anymore. They're really just being out there with it and taking a stance in their racism. And I think that, that's something that we need to really be concerned about, and make sure that, we shut it down, and we shut it down. We're in the streets, we're at their offices, we're doing whatever needs to be done to make sure that, the narrative continues to be that moving forward, we don't want to be this country, and that type of behavior, is not acceptable.
Alex.
Yes.
What is your response?
Well, there's a lot of religious hypocrisy that's going on by these so-called right-wing conservatives, the people that claim to love Jesus, but this is not what Jesus is about. These guys are acting like how they treated Jesus, the Jews that ultimately went after him because, he was speaking out at the time during all those injustices of how people were being killed and women being treated of that era. And so we have history repeating itself here, where there's people on their high horse, and we're being forced as mankind, as a humanity, to finally deal with these really deep subject matters because, we're living in the most technological age, of mankind, but never before have we been so depraved. And so, as they say, in the back east, ass backwards, we're really messed up. And so no one's talking about this. And so, I'm here doing my little bit part. Christina, of course, is just doing tremendous work out here on the West Coast, in dealing and talking about a subject matter which is just, demonized. That automatically it elicits just hatred and fighting and really bad ways of thinking. And so what we need to do, I believe, we need to reach out to a lot of these racists. We need to talk about racism more. The president of the United States, a black man, needs to come forward and not be worried about upsetting people because, he's been quiet for quite a while during his presidency and really discussing this issue. But as we can see, him being black has brought out all these things that we know have been going on for the longest. Can you imagine before all the people that were killed, framed, murdered? I mean, this has been happening, and we're still dealing with this after the death of Martin Luther King, after the death of Malcolm X, and so many other people that died in trying to discuss this subject matter because they don't want to hear it. And so we're going to talk about it now. And I'm here. I got asked 3 times this past week, Alex, aren't you afraid talking about this subject matter? And I'm sure Christina's asked that too, and perhaps even you, Kervin, but we can't be afraid. We have to be bold. We have to be strong. This past week, I was invited to attend a meeting with Prime Minister Farrakhan. The minister is really, as you know, taken on a very, very strong approach to this situation. On the day that I listened to him later on that evening, that's when this crazy kid went and killed all these people. And so, he's speaking very strongly. Some might even say being volatile. But it's been volatile. This has been happening. Now they want us to shut up and not say anything, and the police is going to continue to police itself and do the right thing. I don't think so. The people are tired of this, and they're ready to revolt. They're ready to, rise up. They're ready to start, hurting police officers, killing cops. And of course, we know what's going to happen. They're going to react the way that they did in Ferguson, the way that they always do, to oppress and to put the people down. But I mean, it's a different day and age where you have a lot of these governments across the world that have been tumbled because people are now educated. They are now seeing for themselves the lies, the shams that have been forced down their throat. They're not going to take it anymore.
Here's the thing. For generations, we've had one war after another. There's never been a time known to man where the world was at peace. We find the most ridiculous things to fight over, and most of it stems from territory. And then from territory, you get the race war, the class war. If it's not one, it's the other. In a world where we're living in absolute political correctness, madness, we've got a black president who could actually make a stance in his what could be his last term in office. Stand up and say something quite positive and constructive about that particular issue that has a direct impact on him in person. We can have a nation of people that can come out, but nonetheless, 2 years' time, 4 years' time, we're going to have some other type of war, whether it be a class war, a gender war, or whatever it is. If it's not gay bashing, then it's then it's the Asians. Then we've got this big immigration issue with the Eastern Europeans here in the UK in particular, and now they're spreading their wings. They're going into other countries now and setting themselves up. When will the propaganda of hatred end, and what can we use as a tool to bring love back into the community? The love that we believe that we should have. Because surely that has to be the answer. We've got to love them back to life.
If I might say, Kervin, I witnessed an act of beautiful love. I think I mentioned to you and to your listeners on another program that there was a guy, an actual police chief, that's still a police chief in the deep, deep racist south of Alabama, Montgomery, Alabama, where the historic marches and the bus rides took place with Rosa Parks and a guy by the name of John Lewis and Martin Luther King, of course. John Lewis continues to be a sitting congressman, and he was approached back in 2013 by this police chief who gave him his badge, gave John Lewis his badge, and he told him, hey, I'm sorry for these butt kickings, these killings, these murders. And essentially he atoned for what he knew had been going on for the ages. His conscience couldn't let him continue, we're here to commemorate another year in Montgomery, the historical civil rights period, and nobody, not even the police, saying anything. Well, that day he did. And before that, he had gone really far in removing the patch, the cradle of the Confederacy, the symbol of the white racist pride, the patch from that uniform, which we know that the flag of the Confederacy still continues to fly very proudly above the capital of South Carolina. And then he made his officers go to the Rosa Parks training. I mean, this man is very, very humble. but yet very visionary in realizing that that was one way that he could start out with his police department, that unique leadership to say, hey, I'm sorry. And we do have these problems, and it's not just like how they like to say, well, we pick these people from the human race. Well, no, it's not from the human race. They make them this way. They turn them into cyborgs, and in some cases, they turn them into racists, as I was turned into a racist. I began, and I saw all kinds of things, and I really morphed into a mean, vicious person, which, I'm not proud in talking about it, but I realized that with me discussing these issues, it helps bring more of an insight into what happens into the human mind. And so we're dealing with the sickness out there, these police officers who have this racist mentality. A couple were just arrested this past week in Alabama as we speak, 2 lieutenants, high-ranking lieutenants, and again, there's that damn flag that, was a symbol of a very ugly time in history. And here we are again, with this young kid, that flag all over the place. So we definitely need to atone and discuss about this.
Christina.
Yeah.
Hi, Christina. Listen, can
Hi.
I've kind of given you a little bit of a break for a little while because I knew just how emotional you were when we was talking about your dearest cousin a short while ago. I just want to come back because for me, what are the family doing? A, to keep his memory alive, and B, to show the community or anybody else just what a normal, everyday kind of guy he was.
I think I'm really proud of my family, from the very beginning, when, the media and the law enforcement, and our public officials. And let me just say that, in that city, our mayor was actually the ex-police chief, who used to, allow John Moody to take prostitutes out and do, ride-alongs. And I say that in parentheses, ride-alongs. And they would go out and have sex and do drugs and do these sort of things. So we had a really corrupt government going on in that city. But through all the things that they try to cover up by demonizing my cousin I'm really proud of my family for standing strong. We're all good human beings. We all contribute to society in a positive way. We all love. We're all God-fearing people. And I think that, how we behaved, really, did my cousin proud. We never allowed the conversation to really go very far about his past because that had nothing to do with, what had happened in him being murdered. And I think that us setting that tone and us taking that stance, as difficult as it was for, I know, my family, because, no one wants to have to, go out in public and talk about their son's, criminal history. To some families, it's embarrassing and it's something that, we want to, get over and, deal with and move on in life. But my family, really stood up for Ernest, really refused to discuss those things and really challenged society, to not see him in that light. And I think that that's reflective memory. Those things are not really ever talked about ever when the media talks about him or when society talks about him. When people talk about Ernest, they talk about his family who's kept the torch burning for 4 years now. His family who, is making changes in their own community and in the state and, in the country, on behalf of him. And even though we haven't got justice in the form of John Moody, being arrested, every single day, I dedicate my life. I quit my life. I quit my corporate job and my life as it used to be. And I live and breathe finding justice in this world somehow, for my family. And all the work that I do is dedicated to my cousin and in his memory. We promised them that we would never forget, that we would never stop telling people. And, I can't tell you, I have to this very day, probably at least, 5 or 6 conversations with people, strangers that never knew about it. I carry his flyers around with me in my car everywhere. I talk to everybody about it. If people want to know who I am, they're going to know about Ernest because, that's who I am now. I'm fighting for Ernest and his family, his immediate family, my aunt, who's my mother's sister, my uncle. We just had his memorial, his 4-year memorial, June 8th. We had a protest at the police station. People came from all over California, to come and stand with us again. Our protests have been historic in the way that we've had, upwards of, in a very small town, 500 people or so for the last, 3 years who've come to stand with us and march in the streets with us. We've marched from the place where he was murdered to the police station every single year, except for this year. And we've seen the largest protest in that city in history. And I think that, all of those things have helped dispel anybody who had any doubt that Ernest was anything other than loved and missed, and that, we're not going to go away. And speaking about love, as you said, what's going on in the world and wars and, and that sort of thing. I think that, I want to see a revolution. I don't want to see a war where the people are being hurt and our governments are in charge. I want to see a revolution where the people are in charge in each one of our countries. I want to see people rise up against these so-called, leaders, these lawmakers who have special interests. I want to see the people rise up against corporations like Monsanto and Halliburton and these demons, that prey on the people, because I think that the people, we don't want to go to war with each other. We don't hate each other. When Ferguson was happening, we had people who are in devastating conditions in Palestine tweeting to our brothers and sisters in Ferguson on how to, deal with the burns of the smoke, bombs and all the things that they were, launching at the protesters. We have solidarity with each other across this whole entire earth. It's but a few that we're allowing to put us in these situations. And I call upon the people to stand up and for revolution to finally happen in not only the United States, but across the country. And I think that you see, like, what happened in Ferguson, how much that set off all these different countries and standing in solidarity with us. I mean, here you have the poorest of the poor countries defending these American citizens who have so much more than so many people have in this whole entire world. Yeah. And yet you have people who have dirt floors, who don't even have a place to sleep, who are living in rubble, standing up for us and saying what's happening to them is not right. I stand in solidarity with all human beings across this world who want to see that day and who do have love in their hearts. And we need to prevail against, money, against fake religion. I'm a Christian. I believe in Christ. I don't even like to say I'm a Christian anymore, because that word it's like a bad word. I believe in Christ. I believe in Christ consciousness. I want to help my fellow human beings. I want to be an example to this world. And I think that we need to just, really stop worrying about the things that separate us, such as religion and who's right and who's wrong. I think that Christ, and I think that God is an amazing God, and he can be many things to different people. And maybe to some people he's Allah, and maybe to some people he's Buddha. I'm not one to judge and put limitations on my God. And I think that we need to stop worrying about those things. We need to start concentrating on the things that bring us together, which is love, which is peace, which is our desire to see a better tomorrow for our children.
Absolutely. I think, we can sit down there and we can condemn all the various means and resources that are available in order to make a change in this world. But I do believe that God's love is the only way that people will change, when they accept the Christ in their hearts, when they know their God, when they know what God is and who God is, and that God is love. And we weren't created to fight against one another. Hate isn't something that you're born with. Hate is something that you're taught. Racism isn't something that you're born with. It's something that you're taught. And we need to take the teaching of hatred and racism out of society in order for us to be able to prosper as a people. Before we finish, I want to take this somewhere where we haven't taken it yet, because there was a young child involved in all of this, because Ernest's was a father, wasn't he?
Yes. He was so happy to be a dad. I had not seen him. I was living in a different area when he prior to him dying and or being murdered. And I had seen him at Walmart one day, and he was so happy, and he was, cousin, my son was born, and I said, I know, I seen pictures of him on the Facebook, and he got out his phone and he was showing me the pictures of his child and him, bathing his child and feeding his child and holding his child, and he was so happy, and he was just this beaming from being a dad. And you can, look at the pictures, that the very few pictures that we do have of him with Dominic, and you can see that there was just like a calmness about him, that there was a change in him when his son was born. And it really pains me to know that Dominic will never really know him. We have difficult times. I know that my family has, shared with me that, Dominic, as he's gotten older now, is, realizes that he, from cartoons and from kids around him, that he doesn't have a daddy. And he wants to know why he doesn't have a daddy. He realizes he's different. Some of the first words he ever said was no justice, no peace. Wow. He's a child who's had to know things that no child should ever know. All of our kids in our family. Ernest was actually murdered on his niece's birthday. And she just recently, obviously her birthday was June 8th, the day he was murdered. They celebrated, and, at his memorial, she had a shirt on that says, today's not only my birthday, but it's the day that I gained my guardian angel. And she has a picture of her and Ernest. These are things that these children, should never have to go through. And it's not just the fact that Ernest was murdered, but after Ernest was murdered, the police continued to harass my family, putting restraining orders against Ernest's brother because he was putting up signs that said John Moody was a murderer, and, taking them through court and arresting people for Facebook posts. I mean, they don't just murder one person, they really do set out to destroy anybody who wants to stand up or defend. It's much more diabolical than people could even, try to even wrap their heads around. So, the kids have been, gone through things that they shouldn't have to go through. But at the same time, our children are very conscious. And, what I see in them is I see a future that is not going to, take these sorts of things. Ernest's son is well. He's growing. He's in school. He's very smart. He looks just like his father. He acts just like his father. He laughs just like his father. He's silly. He says some of the same things his dad did, which is very amazing to me how DNA works. Characteristics and traits that, that he's never even seen before, exist within him. And I just thank God that, God gave my family Dominic before Ernest left this earth. And just everything that I do is for Ernest, and in turn that's for Dominic. I want Dominic to know that his dad was very loved, and that great things were done in his dad's name in regards to justice and bettering our world.
Amen to that. I'm going to come back to you to close in just a minute, because we're coming very near to the end of this show, and it really has just been an honor and a privilege to share this time with you, and to hear the real delicate, intricate details of a young man that I could have known in my own time, and would have been my friend just down the street if he lived in my community. He doesn't sound like a bad man or a gangster or somebody that deserved to have died in such a terrible way. But Alex, just before we leave you and hand back to Christina to finish, what can we learn from this as a people? What can we learn from this to try and stop this kind of thing from happening again?
Well, what we need to realize is that right now we're kind of in a runaway train. We're almost headed to a revolution, a new type of civil war in the United States if we don't get bold leadership, stepping out and talking about this. There are a lot of pundits right now. I was just looking at Mitt Romney. He's yelling, "Take down the Confederate flag" at the South Carolina Capitol. To quote, it is a symbol of racial hatred. Remove it now to honor the Charleston victims. And so I end with this, that, it takes more than just words. It takes actions, and it takes dialogue. And I really applaud you, Kervin, for having people like myself and Christina to get this word out. We don't know where this is going to reach, but hopefully someone out there is listening, someone that's there for peace, someone that really cares about, the pain that Christina feels, and so we can stop this from happening to another person.
We have to end the silence is the last word from my producer. Christina, I'm going to leave the last word to you, and I'm going to play out with a track in memory of your dearest cousin, whom we've come to know over these 2 hours on this show. So here's the last word with you.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on today. And I just want to say to families who are going through this that you're not alone. There's people being killed every single day by police officers. But we can change things. I know that it hurts and it's hard. But it can happen. It takes a lot of determination and a lot of patience. But I believe that, this happened to my family for, what the devil intended for evil, that God is used for good, for Amen. His good and Amen. His glory. And I believe that, that there's a purpose for us and the reason why these things happened. I just want to encourage others who are going through the situation to not give up, to try to remember, the good days with your loved one, but at the same time, know that change needs to happen in order to prevent this from allowing another person to go through this and their loved one to be dead at the hands of a police officer, of a racist person, for no reason. This shouldn't be happening. And I think that, until we can all stand together, and say, this is unacceptable, then, I'm going to have to be out there telling my story to whoever will listen, in hopes that people will, really get it, and the fact that we can do things differently. And my cousin didn't have to die. He could still be with us here today if, only we had proper procedures and the way that we allow people with power, with weapons, to rule us. And I think that, it's an important lesson. I thought that we learned in, Auschwitz, but obviously we haven't. What you're seeing today in America is, nothing more than a Nazi regime in the way of our police force. And, I call out to the world, and I ask them to stand up with us and for us. What's happening in America is wrong, and we cannot allow it to continue to happen. And in honor of my cousin, I will work until my dying day to make sure that police officers are held accountable, and that we do see a new world where we do love each other more, and we do value life a whole lot more than we do now.
Thank you. I'm going to invite you back on to our police brutality follow-up show, along with Alex, who's a good friend of the station, and myself. So please stay in touch, Christina. It's been a heartfelt story today. You have moved me emotionally tonight, and it's been an honor and a privilege to share the airways with you tonight and allow you to share this story at such a delicate time for yourself. So please stay in touch. Don't go nowhere. This is the end of the show. I will be posting it up later on, and it will be available for you to use at your pleasure, to inform, to educate, and to promote what you're doing. So thank you very much. We thank you also, Alex, for joining us and being with us again. And we invite you both to our follow-up police brutality show. And Linda will be in touch with you both to let you know when that will be. Thank you very much once again.
World Jam Global Radio. This is Clarity.
This one goes out to Ernest Duenez Jr.
Truly love. Come on, check it out. Seems like yesterday we used to rock the show. I laced the track, you locked the flow. So far from hanging on the block for dough. Notorious, they got to know that life ain't always what it seemed to be. Words can't express what you mean to me. Even though you're gone, we still a team. Through your family, I'll fulfill your dreams. In the future, can't wait to see if you open up the gates for me. Reminisce sometime. The night they took my friend. Try to black it out, but it plays again. When it's real, feeling's hard to conceal. Can't imagine all the pain I feel. Give anything to hear half your breath. I know you're still living your life after death.
World Jam Global Radio, this is Clarity.
Watching us while we pray for you. Every day we pray for you.